You bought a beautiful, healthy lavender plant. The leaves were silver green, the smell was incredible, and you imagined a fragrant purple hedge swaying in the breeze by summer. Then, a few weeks later, it turned gray, woody, and crispy in the middle. The flowers never really came, and now you're standing in your garden wondering what on earth you did wrong. Well, lavender doesn't usually die because you neglected it. It dies because you loved it the same way you love every other plant in your garden. And that, ironically, is exactly what kills it. Lavender is a plant from the dry, rocky hillsides of the Mediterranean. It evolved to survive harsh sun, poor soil, and very little water. So when you treat it like a fussy houseplant, feeding it, watering it, tucking it into rich compost, you're not being kind. You're slowly drowning a desert plant. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through the 5 biggest mistakes that quietly destroy lavender in the exact order they usually happen, from the moment you plant it to the day it finally gives up. By the end, you'll understand not just what to do, but why it works, so you can grow thick, silver, flower-loaded lavender that comes back stronger every single year. Some of these are going to go against everything your gardening instinct tells you. Stick with me, because mistake number 3 is the one that catches almost everyone. Mistake 1, planting it in rich, good soil. Let's start at the very beginning, because the first mistake happens before your lavender even has a chance to grow, and it's the one that quietly sabotages everything that comes after. When most people plant something new, they want to give it the best possible start, so they dig a hole, throw in a generous scoop of rich compost, maybe some manure or moisture-retaining potting mix, and pat it down feeling like a great gardener. For almost every plant in your garden, that's exactly the right instinct. For lavender, it's a death sentence in slow motion. Lavender grows wild on dry, gravelly, poor nutrient slopes where the soil is thin and sharp and drains in seconds. That harsh environment is not something lavender tolerates, it's something lavender needs. Poor soil keeps the plant compact, stresses it just enough to push out essential oils, and forces the roots to stay healthy and dry. The moment you plant it in soft, rich, water-holding soil, a few things go wrong at once. The roots sit in moisture they were never designed to handle. The plant puts on soft, floppy green growth instead of tight, silvery foliage, and it produces far fewer flowers because it's too comfortable to bother. So here's what you do instead. When you plant lavender, you're not aiming for rich, you're aiming for lean and sharp. Mix plenty of grit, coarse sand, or fine gravel into your planting area. Somewhere around 1/3 of the total volume is a good target. If your soil is heavy clay, this matters even more, because clay holds water like a sponge, and lavender hates wet feet more than almost anything. In really stubborn clay, the smartest move is to plant lavender on a slight mound or in a raised bed, so water physically runs away from the crown of the plant. And don't worry about feeding it. I know it feels wrong, but lavender genuinely thrives on neglect when it comes to nutrients. No compost-rich beds, no fancy soil, no buried treats for the roots. The poorer you keep the soil, the more your lavender will reward you with that classic silver foliage and those dense, fragrant flower spikes. Get this first step right, and you've already avoided the root cause of most lavender failures. Mistake 2, watering it like a normal plant. Now let's talk about the mistake that does the most day-to-day damage, because it happens over and over again every week, often with the best of intentions: overwatering. Here's the trap. You see your lavender looking a little tired, maybe the lower leaves are going gray, or the plant looks droopy on a hot afternoon. Your instinct says it needs a drink, so you water it. Then a few days later, it still looks rough, so you water it again. What you don't realize is that those symptoms, the graying, the wilting, the general sadness, are very often signs of too much water, not too little. So every time you reach for the watering can, you're making the exact problem worse while believing you're fixing it. Lavender is built to handle drought. Its roots want to dry out completely between waterings. When the soil stays damp for too long, the roots can't breathe. fungal problems creep in, and root rot sets in from the bottom up. By the time the top of the plant looks bad, the damage underground is already often done. That's why so many people say their lavender suddenly died. It didn't. It was quietly rotting for weeks. So how should you actually water it? The golden rule is simple. When in doubt, don't. For an established lavender plant growing in the ground, in most climates, you barely need to water it at all once it's settled in. Rainfall is usually enough. During a long, brutal dry spell, you might give it a deep soak every couple of weeks, but that's the exception, not the routine. The key word is deep and infrequent. A long, occasional drink that soaks down to the roots and then dries out completely is far better than little sips every few days, which keep the surface damp and the roots gasping. Newly planted lavender is the one exception worth remembering. In its first season, while the roots are establishing, it does need more regular watering to get going. But even then, you let the soil dry out between waterings. You're training the roots to reach down and become self-sufficient, not babying them into dependence. The simplest test in the world. Push your finger a couple of inches into the soil near the plant. If it feels even slightly damp, walk away. If it's bone dry and the plant looks stressed, then and only then give it a deep drink. Master this rhythm and you'll have solved the single most common way gardeners accidentally kill lavender. Mistake 3. Never pruning it or pruning it totally wrong. This is the one I promised you, and it's the mistake that catches almost everyone, including people who've grown lavender for years and can't figure out why their plants keep falling apart. It's all about pruning, specifically not doing it, or doing it in a way that quietly destroys the plant. Let me paint the picture, because you've probably seen it. A lavender plant that's 3 or 4 years old. The outside edges still throw up some flowers, but the center has gone bare, woody, and gray, splitting open in the middle like a tired old bird's nest. People assume the plant is just old and dying. It isn't. It got that way because it was never pruned properly, and once lavender goes fully woody in the center, there's almost no coming back. Here's the crucial thing you have to understand. Lavender does not reliably regrow from old bare wood. Unlike many shrubs, if you cut back into the thick, brown, woody stems, those stems usually just sit there, lifeless, and never push out new green growth. So the entire game of pruning lavender is about preventing it from ever getting that woody in the first place. You prune to keep the plant young, tight, and full from the inside out. So here's how you do it right. Once or twice a year, you give the plant a firm, confident trim. And confident is the key word, because timid little snips are part of the problem. The big, important prune comes after flowering, usually in late summer or early autumn. You take your shears and you cut the whole plant back into a neat, rounded dome shape, removing most of that year's growth, roughly a third of the plant, sometimes more. But here's the line you must never cross. Always leave a little green growth on every stem. Don't cut down into the bare brown wood. As long as there's green above the wood, the plant stays healthy and bushy. Cut into the dead wood, and that section is likely gone for good. A light tidy-up in spring is also useful, just shaping the plant and removing any straggly or winter-damaged bits. But the late summer prune is the one that really keeps lavender alive for years. Done consistently from the time the plant is young, this single habit is the difference between a lavender that gets ragged and woody in 3 years and one that stays lush, mounded, and flowering beautifully for a decade or more. Most people are simply too gentle, too scared to cut. Be braver than feels comfortable, just never into the wood, and your lavender will thank you.
Mistake 4. Starving it of sun and crowding it. We've covered soil, water, and pruning. Now let's talk about something that doesn't kill lavender overnight, but slowly steals its flowers, its fragrance, and its health. Putting it in the wrong place. Specifically, not enough sun and far too little air. Lavender is a full sun plant in the most absolute sense of the term. We're talking a minimum of 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight a day, and honestly, the more, the better. This isn't a preference, it's a requirement. Sunlight is what drives the production of those aromatic oils, fuels strong stems, and triggers heavy flowering. When you tuck lavender into a spot that gets shade for half the day, against a north-facing wall or under the edge of a tree, you get a plant that looks reluctant. The growth turns leggy and floppy as it stretches toward the light. The color fades, the fragrance weakens, and the flowers become sparse and disappointing. The plant survives, but it never really performs. So before you even plant, watch your garden through the day and find the brightest, hottest, most exposed spot you have, the place where other plants might complain about the heat. That's where lavender wants to be. A south-facing position, an open border, the sun-baked edge of a path or driveway, the hot corner against a wall that radiates warmth. Lavender will be happiest exactly where fussier plants struggle. But sunlight is only half of this mistake. The other half is airflow. Lavender hates stagnant, humid, still air around its foliage because trapped moisture invites fungal disease. This is where crowding becomes a silent killer. When you plant lavender too close to other plants, or pack several lavenders tightly together because you want that instant full look, you choke off the air movement around each one. Moisture lingers on the leaves after rain or morning dew, and disease moves in. The fix is to give each plant real breathing room. Space your lavender generously, enough that air can move freely all the way around and through each plant even once it's fully grown. Resist the temptation to fill every gap. That open space might look a little bare at first, but it keeps the foliage dry, healthy, and disease-free, and the plants will grow to fill it beautifully. Bright, hot, and breezy. Get those three conditions right, and you've set your lavender up to thrive instead of merely survive. Mistake number 5, growing the wrong lavender for your climate. Here's the final mistake, and it's a sneaky one, because you can do absolutely everything else perfectly, the soil, the watering, the pruning, the sun, and still lose your plant every winter if you get this wrong. The mistake is choosing the wrong type of lavender for where you actually live. A lot of people don't realize that lavender isn't one single plant. There are several distinct types, and they have very different tolerances, especially when it comes to cold. The two you'll meet most often are English lavender and French, sometimes called Spanish lavender, and confusing the two is where the heartbreak happens. English lavender is the tough, hardy one. It handles cold winters, frost, and snow far better, and in cooler climates it will reliably come back year after year. It tends to have those classic neat flower spikes and an intense, sweet fragrance. If you live somewhere with proper cold winters, this is very often the lavender you want for permanent in-the-ground planting. French and Spanish lavenders are the showy, tender cousins. They often have those distinctive flowers with little petal ears or flags sticking up from the top, and they flower for a long, generous season. But they're far less cold hardy. Drop them into a cold winter in the ground and a hard frost can wipe them out completely. People plant them in spring, fall in love with the flowers, and then are devastated when the plant simply doesn't return after winter. It wasn't anything they did wrong in the growing, it was the wrong plant for the climate from day one. So the fix is to choose with your eyes open. Before you buy, find out which type you're actually looking at and match it honestly to your winters. If you get cold, frosty winters and you want lavender that lives in the ground for years, lean toward the hardy English types. If you've fallen for a tender French or Spanish variety, but your winters are harsh, the smart move is to grow it in a pot. That way you get to enjoy those gorgeous flowers all season, and when the cold comes, you simply move the pot somewhere sheltered, a porch, a cold greenhouse, an unheated room, to protect it through winter. Growing in containers, by the way, solves a lot of problems at once for lavender. You control the gritty soil completely, drainage is easy, and you can chase the sun and dodge the frost. Just make sure the pot has excellent drainage holes, use that lean, gritty mix we talked about, and never let it sit in a saucer of water. Match the right lavender to your climate, or give a tender one the pot it needs, and you remove the last major reason perfectly healthy lavender dies. If this cleared up why your lavender has been struggling, do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps the channel, and I post simple, no-nonsense guides like this every week to help you grow a garden that actually thrives. And before you go, drop a comment and tell me, which of these 5 mistakes have you been making? Be honest, I think a lot of us are guilty of the overwatering one. I read every comment, and I'll do my best to answer your lavender questions personally. Now go give that lavender the tough love it's been waiting for. I'll see you in the next one.